Hi, my name is Joe and I tell stories. Usually on this channel, I'm talking about running games, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Today, I'm talking about writing novels, and I'll tell you why. So if you don't know, I write novels kind of in my spare time as a hobby. I wrote this one. It's got a butt on it. Anyway, it's my second one, and I am currently writing two more. It's just a hobby. I self publish them. It's not like my job or anything. But last week, my eldest child came to me, who is 12, and wanted to know how they could write a novel. And I'm like, yeah, it's not hard. I can explain it to you. And it occurred to me that it was actually a really easy explanation. And my 12-year-old child is currently like two chapters and a full outline into a novel. And if that can be helpful for them, it could probably be helpful for other people. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk you through the advice I gave my 12-year-old child. It's short, it's not complicated. And then, just to prove how easy it is, I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to write a whole novel, obviously, but I'm going to get you far enough that you get the process. Sound good? It's all right. So here it is, the best advice I have right at the top of the video. You're going to need an outline. If you're one of those people who thinks you don't need an outline, you need two outlines. The outline is just a list of stuff that happens in your story. So what I told my child is this. Write down what happens in your story, beginning, middle, end, right? And then just keep breaking it up. Here's the stuff that happens in the beginning. Here's the stuff that happens in the middle. Here's the stuff that happens at the end. And then you break down those sections into even smaller sections. You keep breaking them down and adding stuff that happens until you have the story mapped out. And once you have the story mapped out, you'll be able to see, oh, this thing that happens at the beginning, that's chapter one. This thing that happens after that is chapter two. It will be pretty obvious. At that point in time, you have enough information in your outline that eventually your outline just becomes your story. You chunk a couple of spaces down, you put some text in there that matches what's written above it. That's it. That's the story. And in that way, your outline becomes the novel. Then you wipe out the outline, and all that is left is a novel. I'll show you what I mean. It's not complicated. But in order to do that, we need to reframe this. This is, as you can tell, a novel I'm not writing. I need to preface it that way so that I don't write it, because I have a nasty habit of getting things stuck in my craw and then I write them. I'm not writing this one. And to ensure that I don't write it, I'm going to make it in a genre that I don't write, that I'm not even super interested in writing. We'll make it like a cyberpunk character study kind of noir thing. Yeah, sure. I'm really unlikely to write that. You can if you want, by the way. I'm not copywriting this or anything. You can just have it. I mean, I am copywriting it in that the words that I write are because that's how copyright works. But my point is, I'm not like, you can just take it. Take it. So someone should take this. Take this, publish this, have fun with it. I'm not going to do it. The idea doesn't matter. The process is the thing that matters here. So I'm just starting with a blank page. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into the outline. The outline tells me nothing.
The bones tell me nothing.
And you can see on the side here, this is what I do. I've got tabs over here. So I'm going to take this first tab and I'm going to rename it. And it's going to be called A Novel I'm Not Writing. That's fine, whatever the title of the thing is. And then over here, we're going to generate an outline. I make use of these tabs for other things over here. For example, so this is a novel I am writing. And you can see my outline is much bigger over here, right? I've got the outline of a sort of story over here. I've got this area for details because it's a murder mystery. And this one is really important. I've got characters over here and their character traits and stuff. I've got this little area over here for doing research. In this one, it's stuff that goes in a medieval kitchen. So anyway, this is a little bit of the process, but this, you don't have to go that deep into it. Okay, you're not going to need that stuff, but you're probably going to need characters. So first off, we are going to need a protagonist. This is like a cyberpunky kind of story, so let's have it be a hacker. We're going to call her. Ms. 8, because then we can, make puns with her name about how she 8, a system, or whatever. You get it. We're going to call her Ms. 8. I think that's a great name for a character, and that's not her real name, obviously. We might not even ever need her real name. And then what I do is I just cast that person. I grab a picture here, and I jam, because like I'm not a casting director. I don't need to, I'm not going to use the picture of a famous actor on the cover, but I use it as inspiration for when I make the characters. Real easy to do. So in this case, we're going to use Louisa Harland, because she's a good actor. She was good in Derry Girls. She was good in Renegade Nell. And I think she can do this sort of thing where she seems kind of tough and vulnerable at the same time. Awesome. So we just talk about who she is. She's a hacker. Fine. This is totally optional, but it's what I would do in this case. She has, of course, wants and needs and complications. Something she wants, something she needs, a thing that is making it hard for her to get the things that she wants and needs. I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times from other people. You don't have to do it. In this other thing that I'm writing, I don't do it. My characters here are completely different. I have like just character traits and stuff like that and little pictures. That's because I already know that story. But whatever works for you. So, what does she want? Well, in a cyberpunk dystopia, it's easy to say that she wants like money. Everybody's going to want money. That's a given. We need something unique that she wants. So the scope of the story here is probably that she wants something from like an evil mega corporation. We're going to say that her quest here is for like secret documents. Classic cyberpunk nonsense. That's not what she needs, though. What she needs is, what does she need? Let's say she's sick, right? She doesn't have any money. She has no access to healthcare. She's stuck with like random street surgeons and shit like that. So she needs a cure for a terminal disease. Already, I know this is the plot to Cyberpunk 2077, but we will differentiate it, I promise. What's a good complication? So what if she's more of a former hacker? Because let's say she was burned by a former employer, not just burned out of the business, but burned out of the net. They burned her cyberware. They revoked her passwords, her access. So now she's like a second class cyber citizen. That's good, because that means that she has this job to do where she needs to do hacking, and she can't do the hacking easily. That's great. I like that a lot. Okay. What else do we need? Well, anything else we need can go under details. And details can be anything. Is she the sort of person that drinks soda for breakfast? Sure. Does she has a pet? What kind of pet does she have? Cats and dogs, pretty boring. A pig is too adaptable. She has a monitor lizard named Becky. How big is a monitor lizard? Is a monitor lizard too big to have as a pet? I think that's okay. She has a monitor lizard named Becky. Excellent. This is what we know about Ms. 8. These are the things we know. We're going to know more, obviously, as we go along, but this is all we need to know for now. So what else do we need? We need the shadowy megacorp that she is going after the information from. Okay? So they are also a character. We're going to call them the AWK Corporation. You get it? Because AWK is a Linux command for finding stuff in a. Anyway, you get it. They get a picture too. This evil mega corporation is going to be played by the robot that transforms into a building from Big. Or is it a building that transforms into a robot? I don't remember, actually. Am I just now realizing that the robot that turns into a building from Big has a heart on? Am I crazy? How did I just now this changes everything. Didn't I also use Tom Hanks in that other book? I did use Tom Hanks in that other book. Whatever, I like Tom Hanks. Okay. So what are some things we know about the AWK Corporation? I mean, obviously they're like an evil mega corporation. We can figure out what kind of evil mega corporation later. It doesn't matter right now. So it doesn't matter if they're into like, biotech or slave trade or whatever they're into. We can figure that out later. But just like her, they have wants, needs, complications, and details. So as far as what they want, this doesn't have to be complicated, right? Maybe we make this a politics thing. They want a certain candidate to be elected. Is that, mayor, president, school board? I don't care. Governor? Doesn't matter to me. We'll figure that out later. That's a detail. That just tells us what the scope of the size of this thing is. You make it. What you do is you take the scope of the thing, scope of the story, and then you just make this whatever the next step up is. So if this story ends up just being about, her neighborhood or whatever, and that like sort of area, then it's probably like the mayor, right? If it ends up being about this city and other surrounding cities, then maybe it's the governor. Who cares? That's just you writing.
That is just you cooking.
That's not hard to do. You can figure that out. So they want a certain candidate here to be elected, but in order for that to happen, what they need for his secrets to be hidden. He's got secrets because he's a politician. They have secrets. Except apparently AOC, whose only secret is that time she was dancing on the rooftop really cool. Anyway, politician, secrets. And if the secrets get out, he is not very likely to be elected. Is that because he's a piece of shit? Maybe. Or maybe it's because they can be spun a certain way. Who knows? Maybe they're not even real secrets. Maybe the whole thing is fake. Doesn't matter to me. And of course, the complication, they're planning on using those same secrets to control him once he's in office, because obviously they're an evil mega corporation. I mean, they're not the good guys. But here's the detail. This is the detail that I think matters. And this is why this is going to be interesting. Maybe he's the best candidate. Maybe the guy he's running against is a fucking fascist dictator, like a populist, piece of shit. Maybe even like a secret pedophile. Topical. Yeah, I like that. So she is trying to steal this information from the AUK Corporation, which of course means that we need to know about her employer, who must then by default be the said corporation. You get it? Because SED is also a Linux command and you use it to extract. You get it. The shadowy SED corporation will in this particular character tab be played by this shadowy bullshit right there. And they are, by definition, a worse megacorporation with their own wants, needs, complications, and details, just like everybody else. So what do they want? Well, obviously, we just said they want to install a populist fascist into office because they own this guy. A guy they own, probably a guy who, matches their freak, maybe someone who served on their board, maybe someone who has, strong ties to their leadership. Doesn't matter. We'll worry about it later. What they need then, obviously, is to discredit this other guy. I keep saying guy. They're not necessarily both guys. I don't care. If I were writing this, and I'm not, I would be thinking to myself, ooh, would it be neat if this populist fascist asshole was a woman? Yes. Would it also be kind of unrealistic? Kinda. They tend to be into strong man type figures, but also clearly this is a futuristic novel, so I don't care. Anyway, point is, I would worry about the details later. Shape and size and color and parameters, all that stuff is open to interpretation. You just do whatever you need for the story, right? Well, obviously. Complications. Well, the biggest complication for this one is that we don't know who they are yet. By which I mean our protagonist doesn't know who they are yet. But they are a shadowy employer. Ooh. What if our shadowy employer made Ms. 8 sick in the first place? Just pretend we know how to capitalize things. That's cool. Then we get a cool reveal later on that can make for a good flip twist. I like it. Okay. And of course, we have other characters in here as well, right? We have the good politician. Put their faces in there. I don't need to do this whole thing. You get the idea. And then we just go in here and we make an outline. So I'm going to type up a few chunks of this. You don't need to watch that. That's boring. But it looks like, here's what it looks like. So this is just real quick overview of what happens. Ms. 8, not her real name, is approached by a secret employer and asked to secure corporate secrets secretly. From who? The AUK Corporation. By who? She doesn't know yet, because figuring out who your employer is while you're on the job is sort of it's a cyberpunk shtick. Let's go with it. And they offer her, in return, an antidote, which begs the question, how do they know she's sick? Does it beg the question? No. Begging the question is a logical fallacy wherein you conclude the truth of where you assume the truth of your conclusion and bake your premise into it. This implies the question? Yes, this strongly implies the question, how do they know she's sick? It prompts the question. That's what it does. Okay, so what happens after that? She gets a bunch of information. There's a moral dilemma in which we pretend we know how to spell the word dilemma. And then she tricks the said corp, gets her a cure, and they don't get what she needs. Does she get her cure? Is it that kind of story? Or does she choose not to get her cure? Maybe she chooses to fuck over her employer and then cross her fingers about a cure down the road. What kind of story is it? I don't know. Again, that's just you writing. All right, so this is obviously not chapters yet, but we can make it chapters, right? Of course we can. Watch this. For a start, before she gets the information, she has to, she does the hack. That's a big deal, right? Yeah, sure, obviously. And what do we know about her? We know she's been burned out of the net. We know she doesn't have hardware. We know she doesn't have software. We know she doesn't have passwords. So that means before that, she has to get hardware and credentials. Maybe she talks to old friends or calls in old favors. This is good because if she's talking to old friends, she's calling in old favors. That tells us something about this character. Now we know that she's the sort of person who is owed favors. Maybe she did jobs in the past for free, right? Or she did jobs in the past, people couldn't pay her. She's like, fine, you're going to owe me one. That tells us a lot about our protagonist here. Good, like that, like her already. And not just because she was good in Renegade now. Also, what about this hack? This is a big deal. This is like the whole crux of the first chunk of the thing, right? This is like the climax of the first third of this book, a false climax, if you will. So she does the hack. Is that a thing she can do from a Starbucks? It is not. Again, we pretend we can type. So does she need to be on site? Well, that depends. One of my pet peeves as a guy who works in IT, one of my pet peeves with these sorts of hacking scenes is always, well, we need to be on site in order to make this hack happen. Now, that's just a cheap way to get the character on site so that some action can happen to them so that they can be in physical danger. I've never really liked it because the majority of all IT work happens remotely now. Wait till, the not 2099 year that this takes place in. But I have also worked on plenty of secure systems, and I know that there are sometimes times when you do need to be on site because you've got a system that's airlocked, right? Or you've got a system that can only be accessed from a few specific places. So maybe she needs to be in a secure facility, not necessarily where the information is, but someplace, right? Maybe she needs a very specific type of credentials. Maybe she needs, to hijack a VPN from someone, that kind of thing. That can be the case. Maybe she needs to steal a secure server or a secure access computer. These are all good options. And bear in mind, the answer is different when you're writing a novel from what the answer would be if you were writing, say, a video game or a movie, right? If this were a TV series, if this were a movie, the answer would be whatever looks the coolest on screen. If this were a video game, the answer would probably be whatever creates a cool resource that we can use multiple times in the future for future hacking missions. We don't need to do that here. We can just do whatever feels right for the setting. And I don't need to answer the question. That's just you writing.
That is just you cooking.
But the answer to the question matters. Put it in here. So she gets the information after that. Of course, that means that she realizes what it is. She's probably not supposed to look at this information. But of course she does, wouldn't you? Okay, then what? Well, then we have the moral dilemma and a twist. This kind of story always has a twist. It doesn't have to go full Shyamalan, but we need a twist of some sort. I like. The twist should be something tied to her illness. So what if the said corporation made her sick? Yeah, classic cyberpunk stuff. Now that doesn't sound like a twist to you because you've been watching me make the outline, and right from the very beginning you were like, yeah, probably the bad guys made her sick. But you don't need to think that as a reader. As a reader, we can go back up here, higher in the timeline here, and we can say she's got, what's a cool name for a future disease? It doesn't matter. We're going to call it black ice. She's got black ice, which is, so doctors say that it is a degenerative disease caused by too much access to hostile technology, right? Basically hacking overload. You get hit with one too many pieces of malware. Next thing you know, your brain stops working and you get all kinds of random symptoms. What is it really? So black ice is like a nanobot attack that they have given to a lot of people. We pretend we can spell again. So it lays dormant until they need it, and they can buy those people with the cure. Basically, it is biological ransomware. And maybe she finds that out, right? So she learns the truth about Black Ice along with the details about the campaign. Again, we pretend we can spell. Only you see the outline. Now, where does she come by that? I don't know. Maybe this is two separate things, right? Maybe in the initial hack, she gets too much data. Maybe in the initial hack, she downloads a whole bunch of shit, and then she has to go figure out what it is while dudes are chasing her. And she's like, what did I actually get? Is that the plot of Hackers? Yeah, that's the plot of Hackers. Steal cool stuff. Or maybe this is two separate hacks, right? Maybe she hacks the the Auk Corp to get this data, and then later on, when things get sketchy with her employer, she hacks them back. She like maybe traces back one of their shadowy calls, gets into their system, and learns all kinds of shit about them. Doesn't matter. It works either way, right? So then she gets to choose. Do I get my cure? Is there even a cure? I don't know. Again, the answer is just you, right?
That is just you cooking.
But I think what happens here is that maybe in the end, she exposes SedCorp, exposes how all these people have Black Ice, and is going to cross her fingers and hope that now that she has information on it, that somebody out there in the community can reverse engineer a cure before she croaks. That feels like the kind of thing that a cyberpunk hero does. Right? So she exposes the fascist dickbag. She releases the Black Ice intel to the net. Probably the SedCorp, they're gonna like try to amp up her symptoms toward the end. So we get one of those cool scenes at the end where she pushes the button and blacks out, or maybe she doesn't know if she hit the button, and we get a cool reveal afterwards where our protagonist is, maybe there's a cool maybe there's a cool dream sequence at the end. I know that's still Cyberpunk 2077, but it's a really good game. Also, that wasn't really a dream sequence. This could be. This could just be a dream. She could just drift for a while. Do you know what I think? I think we need a tragedy in here somewhere. We need to show everybody that she's desperate, right? Not just lives in a crappy apartment. But what we need is some way to show the audience this character needs what they're offering, so that when she chooses not to get her cure, it matters. And I know you're going to hate this. I hate this too. But I think while she's on the hack, I think we got to kill Becky.
How dare you?
I know she's now your favorite monitor lizard, but I think we kill Becky. And I don't think it's insidious. I don't think it's bad guys go in there and kill her pet to make a point. I think that something happens, like maybe it's malnutrition because our protagonist is poor and Becky's been eating cat food. So right here in the front, we're going to feed Becky. Actually, we're not going to feed Becky there. We're going to feed Becky here. We're going to feed Becky cat food. So maybe it's malnutrition that gets Becky. Maybe while she's out doing the hack, she's out for a couple of days. Maybe she asks a friend of hers to feed Becky, but that friend of hers can't get into her apartment because the landlord has locked it because she's in arrears on rent. Maybe the heat gets turned off, and Becky, being a lizard, does not cope well. Whichever way we go with it, whatever it is, you foreshadow it at the beginning. And then Becky dies. And that hits her really hard, right? So Becky dies. Then she realizes what all this intel is. She realizes that she is about to give a bunch of valuable information on a halfway decent politician to a company that is killing her. Or maybe she even finds out afterwards that the company is killing her, right? So maybe she's like, look, this guy's a good politician, but my monitor lizard just died because I don't have enough money for heat, or because I don't have enough money for rent, or because I don't have enough money for decent food. Tough. And then after that, we add another layer where we find out that the Sed Corporation are the ones that made her sick in the first place, and now this is all their fault. You get it. That's characterization. Again, you writing. But it's important. Put it in the outline, right? Switch the order around, make it work. But what that gives us is now we have our opening chapter. We have Ms. 8 feeds Becky and then is secured by this corporate. You know what I like? I like the idea. Here's the thing. This is the point at which we start writing. Like, I'm not going to do this whole thing, but you can see how this would work, right? We've taken this first idea, turned it into a chapter, right? We've taken, again, we pretend we can spell. We could take this second idea and we could turn this into a chapter, right? If we want to go the old friends route, we give them a name, and a history. If we want to go in the call in the old favors route, then we need to know where and why. And she goes to a cool location, and we add in some thematic elements, and maybe she has to do a favor for a guy, or maybe, you get it. There's some negotiations back and forth. This stuff all writes itself. But that's how you turn these ideas into chapters. Like, we're kind of at the point now where this could be your first 2 or 3 chapters of the book. Easy, right? So then you just start writing. You're like, we're gonna feed Becky, and I'm not gonna make you watch me write that, but I'm gonna write that. Let's write that. Here we go. Okay, so we're just gonna. So what did I do here? I entered down. I wrote chapter 1. For the record, this kind of used to be over here. So the only thing I do editing, formatting wise on here, how about this? Do yourself a favor. Don't format this. Don't go in and fiddle with the formatting too much. Here's what I do, real minimum, right? Chapter 1, heading 2, I just do this. If you want, you can put it in the middle just to make it look pretty, if that's the sort of thing you want to do. And if you want that to stick, you just go here to heading 2 and you update heading 2 to match. And now every time you, now every time you do that, you'll apply heading 2, and there you go. It ends up in the center of the thing. That's great. And the only thing I do other than that is I go into this first paragraph and I just slide this little toggle up here over. I just tab it over, and then I do the same thing. I go format, paragraph styles, normal text, and I update normal text to match what's here. And that's because, I like to have paragraph indentation. This isn't going to do it by default. The alternative is putting spaces in there, but I know from experience that if you put extra spaces in between your paragraphs, you're just going to have to remove them later, so don't do that. But don't fuck with the formatting any more than this. Because what you're going to do later, let's assume you're self-publishing. That's what I do. If you're self-publishing, you're going to take this, you're going to dump it into a Word doc. You're going to dump this thing into a Word doc, like a Microsoft Word or something like that, or Open Office, whatever you got. And you're going to do all your formatting in there. So you want to have done as little as possible here, because over there, you're going to create you're going to create new pages. That's where you're going to deal with your gutters and your page numbering and all that stuff. And that is its own thing. That's a whole video unto itself, which I do not need to do because lots of other people have done it. And I don't know if maybe I'll link them in the doobly-doo, but if I don't, feel free to ping me. I'll find you one. There's tons of great videos on this. That is a completely separate animal. It is a completely separate skill set. It's not this. That's not writing, that's formatting. Or if you're going to go the traditional route, you're going to send this off to an editor, and they're going to have their own submission guidelines. Probably it's going to be like double spaced, and as little editing as possible, because they don't want to, they're not interested in your flashy formatting. They just want to see Word. So, but you're going to have their submission guidelines to follow. And so you don't want to do a lot of custom shit here and then have to undo it. So don't. Just keep it simple. Wherever you put this later, that's what you can do. But look what we've done here, okay? And again, if you're the sort of person who is like, oh, outlining is going to remove the joy of discovery for me. Okay, so right here, we've got this whole bit where she has trouble buying food out of a vending machine, and I sort of created the idea that she's got to use like a digital basically like a cell phone, like a digital interface, because why? Because she's sick, and because probably the place in her head where she would normally have like a computer chip or a SIM card or something, or some sort of a cyber deck, is like infected and gross. So she can't do that. Okay. So she can't use an AR interface, and she's having to use this like sort of wanky, janky, sort of cobbled together magnetic wires thing to kind of like to simulate a tap to pay sequence. Like, that's just discovery, right? All the little setting details, that's just stuff. That's not in the outline. And this idea here that she had to scan it like 9 or 10 times, but like half those times it charged her and just didn't give her food, and now her bank account is screwed. So that's something we know about our character. We know that if she buys 9 tins of cat food, she's going to be broke. Okay, now we know that about her. That stuff's all discovery. And yes, you'll write stuff in here that means you have to go back and edit your outline. That's fine. The point of the outline is not to be immutable. The point of the outline is to give you structure so that you can write the rest of the stuff, right? So that you never end up in a situation where you sit down and you type the words chapter 2 and then you go, oh man, I don't know. You always know. You always know what you're doing next. And sometimes the hard work is going to be, how do I get from this point to this point? But that is you guys, that's such a small problem to solve by comparison than the rest of the fucking monkey. Do you know what I like? I like the idea that since she was out there so long getting this cat food that her lizard shouldn't even be eating in the first place, I like the idea that when she gets back in, she'll have like an email from the AUK corporation, from the said corporation, or from just, shadowy employer, and it'll be like, prepare to be called in 1 minute. And then it'll be like 3 missed calls, and she's gonna have to like try to call these people back or like somehow get a message out. I like that because that tells us a lot about the kind of life she lives. Anyway, and then all you do is you can do one of two things here. This is done now. I don't need this part of the outline anymore. So either you can just delete it. That's fine. Or if you want, you can grab it and make yourself a brand new tab here called outline and put it in there. And then as you go, you remove the outline you've gone past and you dump it into this document here. You don't have to do that, but I like to do that. It makes it feel cleaner and it kind of gives me a sense of accomplishment. And that's it. That's the whole process. Everything after that is just you writing.
That is just you cooking.
And yes, this process does mean you still have to write the book, but it makes it a lot easier to write the book. And again, if my 12-year-old can do it, you can do it. Hey, let's get out of here. So what have we done today? We pet the kitten. So what have we done today? Well, we talked through the process that I, and apparently also my 12-year-old child, use to write novels. And I think you can use it too. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You can say so in the comments. And that will be just great. And if you do like it, also you should say so in the comments. Will this work for you? Yes. Yes, it will. If you do this, it will work for you. That doesn't mean it's the way you want to do it. That doesn't mean it's going to be your favorite way to do it. But I got to tell you, you can do it. This is not a hard thing to do. Anybody can do this. Once you've got all the outline stuff in place, it's literally just a matter of making time. Do you know what I do to make my life easier? So I am on a Discord server. And a lot of bigger Discord servers will have this, that has a little room called Writing Sprints. And in there, we just talk about what we're writing and how our writing is going. And I just leave it open. Like that's my default room that I go to. So when I sit down at my computer and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I open up Discord, it says Writing Sprints, and I go, oh, yeah, I could probably write a little bit. And that's it. That's how I get this. That's how I get this shit done. And that reminds me to write just a little bit every day. It's not a big deal. And I'm not one of those guys who's going to tell you got to write, for 5 hours a day. You don't even have to write for 10 minutes a day. I don't care. Write when you write. Are you okay back there? But just make it a part of your life and you'll get done. And then you'll feel cool. You'll be like, oh, I wrote a thing. If any of this sounded even moderately interesting to you and you're interested in the sort of stuff I do around here, there will be videos coming later that are going to be about gaming again. You're welcome. I'm going to have a game prep video, 2 game prep videos coming up, as well as a campaign diary where we talk about respites and draw steel. If my thoughts on writing have interested you, I will have a link in the doobly-doo to where you can get my books and stuff. I have a website where I release my books 1 chapter a month for free on the internet. But if you are impatient and you don't want to wait a long time for those chapters, you can also purchase them. Those links are there and again in the doobly-doo. That's all I've got. But I do think that the next time I write a book, I need to have a Tom Hanks character. So I think that maybe that's just my new thing. Tom Hanks, world domination.